Hey everyone, welcome back to another hardware news recap for the week. The last 2 weeks now have been some of the hardest weeks we've ever had for testing. It's been 3080s and 3090s, and soon coming up, there's AMD announcements as well. And of course, we've had console announcements dotted in between the last few weeks. So now we're going to recap some of the other major stories and minor stories that have erupted out of the RTX 30 series launch, and of course, some of the things that we've missed along the way while we've been focused on the 30 series. For example, Microsoft, and a bit more about what its Bethesda acquisition actually means. We briefly covered it last week. We'll be talking about AMD's Ryzen and Athlon C-Series CPU announcements that came out this week as well. The Western Digital spin for SSDs and hard drives, trying to maybe mitigate some of its issues it's had. Amazon Luna game streaming service, and a couple of RTX 30 stories like GDDR6X thermals and leaked personal information, allegedly. Before that, this video is brought to you by the EVGA XR1 capture device. The new EVGA XR1 capture device is OBS certified and doesn't require any drivers. So it's a plug-and-play solution supporting 1080p 60 capture, and importantly for us or overclockers, it can stream BIOS capture without issue and is more reliable when used with an unstable overclock. The capture card has a built-in audio mixer, it can pass through 4K, and includes HDMI in, out, USB Type-C, console party links, and microphone in and out options. Learn more at the link in the description below. So first up, quick GN news item. This shirt, the 1 million subs limited shirt with the gold foil, is on the store on store.gamersnexus.net. We are taking the final list of back orders. As always, we do back orders for limited shirts because we need to figure out the distribution of sizes, since if we just order sizes, then we'll end up invariably with the wrong assortment of sizes. So that's still on the store, but we're almost out. We're expecting to run out in about the next week from the time this is being filmed anyway, so it might be the next 5 days or so from when it goes up. If you want to grab one, you can go to store.gamersnexus.net. It is, as always, one of the best ways to support us and the work we do, and the money that we make from selling things like this, the mod mats and the toolkits, goes straight into testing equipment that we use every day for the reviews that we make. And additionally, if you missed it before, the shirt on the back of it has sort of a plot of our subscriber base just on YouTube over time. The total site history goes back to about 2007, 2008. Been doing this for about 13 years now. But on the YouTube side, it goes back to about 2009. So we've got that trend line plotted if you want some GN graphs on the shirt, because of course it wouldn't be a GN product without a graph of some kind. So anyway, thanks to all of you who have pre-ordered one already, and we'll have those in production shortly. We're just collecting the final assortment of sizes on the store. Another quick GN item here is after the next few days, once we get through the rest of some of the 30 coverage that we're working on, RTX 30 coverage, and case coverage like the LandCool 215 is on the way. The Gallick AIO coverage will be here in the next probably 10 days or so as well. We put it on hold for the video card launches. Once we get through those, the plan is to focus a little bit on some testing improvements and behind the scenes improvements. So you'll start seeing those details roll out in the next probably 2 weeks. So basically, after a major launch, we normally try to slow down for a few days and take some time to just improve processes overall and improve the quality of the data for the reviews, things like that. So we'll be talking about that more soon too. There might be a day or two gap in uploads when that happens. Okay, first news story is that NVIDIA allegedly leaking personal information. This has not been verified first party yet, but a recent post to Reddit has been escalated to the NVIDIA team, and that post claims that other user data was being auto-filled into the fields on the NVIDIA checkout page. The user went and inspected the source code on the page, hit F12 and inspect if you want to do that, and saw user email data. It was also apparently auto-filling into the email field, if we understand correctly, and allegedly there were parts of credit card numbers being shown as well, like the last couple digits, although from what we understand, not the full number. So this has been escalated to NVIDIA at this point. The information was corroborated by other users on the thread who posted screenshots of similar issues popping up, some of them with not the best ability to blur the names involved, but we'll go ahead and add that in for them. And looking back, this could be an issue similar to Fallout 76 or back when Steam had issues where other people's account pages were showing rather than your own. So it may be a server caching thing, maybe memcached, or it could be something like CDN and how that works. So if NVIDIA has implemented new features to try and deal with the excess traffic, excess, of course, because they don't have enough inventory. So anything that they have is excess at this point. It may be from one of those things, but either way, this is, in the very least, a potential GDPR concern. And additionally, it's a good reason that retailers, traditional ones like Newegg, Asterisk also has issues, and Amazon, and direct sales through certain partners that do it that way, they prove some value there. And further, the partners can enjoy having a little bit more value out of their own cards, where you can only buy them through retailers, in some cases, not through NVIDIA's own store page. So the kind of problem we've been pointing out the last couple of years now is NVIDIA is slowly improving its production pipeline, its logistics pipeline, its card quality for the FE series in a way that's good, obviously, because we dinged them for bad cards and poor designs. So they should be improving them. But at the same time, just because of the way NVIDIA behaves in general, look at the overclocking side of things the last few years, where they continually try to lock stuff down, because of the way NVIDIA behaves, because of the actions it's taken in the past with partners, because of its general sort of vindictive nature with certain types of card deployments by partners, we're always a little bit concerned that there's a future where NVIDIA is trying to bring sales first party. Now, right now, they're not in a position to do that. NVIDIA would likely claim, if we spoke with them, that this is not the end goal, but it's something you could see as feasible given the way it's trending towards a bit of a monopoly with NVIDIA dominating the card market. So it's always been a bit of a concern of ours. But at least for now, this launch has been botched enough where it looks like that territory is safe for the partners. There's other benefits to partners as well. You get better regional access in places where NVIDIA doesn't sell through its store, better warranty support, potentially better logistics, things like that. So there's always going to be benefit, better card designs in a lot of cases. Always some benefit, but hopefully it stays that way. Now, the lack of inventory we still have on good authority is more related to the demand of the product, which if you look at search trends is extreme compared to previous launches, rather than just the supply. Obviously, supply plays a role in it. But other issues like this potentially leaking personal information through its store page, that's not really something that is forgivable or permissible. So they're going to have to fix that quickly, if not already. Okay, GDDR6X thermals for RTX 3000 cards. We've started, actually not sure if the data is published yet, but we have filmed at this point videos about some of the partner model cards for the RTX 3000 series, and those are starting to contain thermal data for GDDR6X and for VRM MOSFET memory. We do this every generation where to compare partner cards one to the next, actually this is the one we were just working on, the Eagle, we'll take thermal measurements for memory, MOSFETs, and see who's cooling the most effectively. Now, in that process, we found that at least on the first few cards we've tested, the GDDR6X thermals look better than the FE card, especially noise normalized. But there's some additional research put out there too by Igor's lab, and so we'll share both parts of this from his and from our research. With the launch of the 30 series, Micron's GDDR6X memory got introduced, the first time it's been deployed, and currently it is G6X SG RAM being binned at 19 gigabits per second and 21 gigabits per second, which led people to wonder why the 3080 didn't get the faster binned variant, but like most things binning, it's because of quality of the silicon, the availability of it, and other issues like thermals that we'll be talking about. So even the 3090 VRAM config is clocked lower than 21. It's at 19.5, if I remember correctly. And aside from future product segmentation reasons, thermal concerns may be one of the driving reasons for the lack of the fully clocked GDDR6X. Igor from Igor's lab conducted some tests on the PCB of the RTX 3080 FE to measure the temperature of G6X modules relative to overall board temperature. Igor did this using some software, a thermal camera, so thermography, and coated the back of the board with a varnish that has a known emissivity for thermal imaging. And playing The Witcher 3 at 4K for 30 minutes, he noted an ambient room temperature of 22°C and a GDDR6X module operating temperature of 104 degrees Celsius. For perspective, at the time when Igor wrote this content, I don't think this was known, but we were working on our own piece in the background, and for perspective, we found out TJ Max for G6X is 110 degrees Celsius. That doesn't mean it's the optimal operating range, it should be below that, but that is TJ Max. It's a bit higher than previous memory solutions, and to that effect, 104 degrees is technically within the spec. Much like 109 degrees is technically within the spec of the 5700 XT. Doesn't mean it's good, but it means you can do it. The result Igor presented was a delta of about 20 degrees Celsius between the chip and the bottom of the board. And in our own testing, we have seen memory modules on some partner cards closer to the 70, 80 degree range, and that is for a flip chip measurement. So it's a flip chip module. That means that on the back of the board for 3080s at least, this is probably going to be just marginally closer to the actual silicon of the memory than a topside measurement, which is how Igor's measuring it as well. He's taking an image of the backside. So you'll get a bit closer to the temperature that way, but can't really get true temperature unless you're using software. Igor's got some of that as well to read the G6X internal memory sensor, temperature sensor. AMD makes this available, NVIDIA doesn't, which is extremely frustrating, but you can work around it with thermal probes and to some extent thermography. Igor's approach to measurement works well overall. There's the one caveat that if there's a board partner that is making very heavy use of a backplate, it becomes a little bit more limited because you can't get you really shouldn't be removing the backplate to get an image because then you're affecting the cooling. But for what he's doing here, especially with FE boards, you're not losing that much in performance, and the 104-degree imaging he's getting is pretty close to what we're seeing with thermocouples and with the backplate on. So that's what we've known so far for thermals between his testing and our own. And currently, Igor's sort of hypothesis or theory on all of this is that the memory modules won't clock higher until this solution, at least on the FE cards, is solved. So this is obviously something to keep an eye out for, but it's also why testing more than GPU temperature on partner models is important. And we're doing that. It's just slow to roll out because of that. Next story, NVIDIA boxes, and the Nuked launch that we talked about. So at this point, pretty well known that the 30 series launch went from being the sort of the peak point in the year for hardware launches, where there's a lot of excitement around it. It was a product that looked fairly good, to being over-marketed and a bit disastrous on the logistics side of things, in the very least. Part of this is because of the marketing, where you saw one early benchmark that was completely controlled and dictated by NVIDIA in terms of the games that could be used, the settings that could be used, hand-built drivers, all that stuff, and then people taking that information and acting like it's a complete, fully done review. Another issue where you've got 8K gaming being marketed ahead of the launch day of the 3090 to hype people up so that when reviews go live at launch second, all the cards are already sold out anyway, although they've got a bit of a time to cancel the order. And now you've also got issues, obviously, of the website potentially leaking information. So on the inventory side, the 30 series has matched the Xbox Series X and S and the PlayStation 5, all of which basically immediately sold out. Also, the AMD 3300X and the 3100, if you remember, were effectively not available for months after launch. The launch date, the availability date, moved multiple times, as Keegan on our team knows, because he was trying to buy one, and it kept getting moved back from AMD's initial date to whenever it eventually came out, something like a month or two later. And then there's been issues with the Intel 10 series as well. So availability across the board for hardware has not been good this year. All of that aside, though, one of the new issues this week came from Newegg, which was found to be shipping RTX 3080s in bulk packaging, not retail packaging, and some customers were reporting damaged cards showing up. EVGA's Jacob Freeman, now famous for calling in during our stream, tweeted about this on his account and noted that customers should contact Newegg or EVGA if any damaged cards arrive occurring from Newegg's mistake, or they're supposed to be transplanting that into retail packaging, or in the very least doing more than just shoving a $1,500 plus card or an $800 card into a box with half an inch of bubble wrap around it. That's just, come on. Who does that? Who's working there? Come on, Newegg. Anyway, that's the newest issue that popped up. And if you do have one of those show up, if you happen to order one, it would suck a lot, would be the technical phrase. If you're one of a very relatively low versus demand amount of 3080s or 3090s shows up damaged. So contact Newegg or EVGA if that happens. I wouldn't accept it as is. Microsoft up next. So what the Bethesda acquisition really means, following up on last week's story. The name of the game for console wars has mostly been exclusive game deals lately. Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo have historically had consoles, not all of them, but have had consoles where they're selling them at a loss and making it back on licensing fees from the game publishers, which is why you saw the game pricing increase over time as well, to account for that loss so that they can be competitive at launch of the hardware. So while this next generation of hardware will see the console wars spill out onto several new fronts, like game streaming, for example, subscription services, xCloud is one of them, Game Pass, PlayStation Plus. Exclusives will still be a driving factor in console adoption. First-party studios and titles have long been the limitation for Xbox, but Microsoft has been aggressively looking to remedy this problem with the recent acquisition spree that it's been on. This spree has seen Microsoft snatch up development talent such as Obsidian Entertainment and In Exile Entertainment, among others. Now, and what's no doubt been Microsoft's ultimate play, we reported on the acquisition of ZeniMax Media and Bethesda Softworks for $7.5 billion. It's hard to overstate how significant this is for Microsoft, as the company now has access to some of the most popular game IP in existence, including Fallout, The Elder Scrolls. Actually, one of the comments last week on the news video was, finally, this will stop Bethesda from launching Skyrim on everything. But they're trying. They're really trying there. Doom is another one, of course. It's hard to imagine, though, Sony having much of a move to make after this one. That was a bit of a surprise, and we suppose Sony could maybe call Take-Two Interactive and see about buying Rockstar Games or something. But short of that, this was a major play by Microsoft. There's some interesting implications for the Xbox and PC with all this. First of all, Microsoft will use Bethesda games to bolster its Xbox Game Pass service, which has already seen impressive growth. Microsoft confirmed that Bethesda games will be available on Xbox Game Pass from day one, and that Doom Eternal will land on the service next month. Microsoft's games, both on Game Pass and elsewhere, already come to PC, of course. Furthermore, Microsoft has stated that it will honor the exclusivity agreements for Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo that will be coming out on Sony and its new PlayStation platform. However, there's zero indication that future Bethesda games like Starfield, The Elder Scrolls 6, and others will land on PS5, and Microsoft likely didn't spend $7.5 billion to share games with Sony. Microsoft maintains that the future of Bethesda games will be on Xbox and PC and, quote, other consoles on a case-by-case basis, like reported last week. Now, the new bit of information for this week is that Microsoft's news showed another abysmal pre-order event. Similar to recent pre-orders, the Xbox Series X and S consoles were immediately sold out, and what's more, many users erroneously ordered the Xbox One X. That's the real problem here. Running out of inventory, not new right now. We have issues with it too, where no one can keep stuff in stock, even at relatively to the size or per capita high quantities. But the real issue is the amount of Xbox One X orders that went out. So that's what you get, Microsoft, for the naming convention that's been chosen for the consoles. That said, they're probably not mad, because that inventory was stagnant at this point anyway. So yes, the One X has no doubt been purchased by mistake. The entire process was also riddled with crashes of websites, just like we saw with NVIDIA. There were bugged shopping carts, what appeared to be zero inventory in some instances, and Microsoft is, of course, promising more opportunities to pre-order, but obviously this has been a challenge for major technology launches this year. AMD announcing the Ryzen and Athlon 3000C series CPUs. While we're still waiting on AMD to talk more about Zen 3, which is coming in the next couple of weeks, early October for that, and then RDNA 2 at end of October, AMD is still trotting out some interesting smaller CPUs that are aimed at growth in the Chromebook market, which apparently has done very well with people doing more schoolwork from home. That's been the major growth segment for it. So AMD is announcing its Ryzen and Athlon 3000C series, and this will mark the first Ryzen branded CPU for Chromebooks. AMD's 3000C series lineup will consist of the Ryzen 7 3700C, that's a 4-core 8-thread part, R5 3500C, the R3 3250C, which is 2 cores, 4 threads, the Athlon Gold 3150C, the Athlon Silver 3050C, and all of these chips have a 15-watt TDP for whatever that's worth, with Radeon Vega graphics scaling up to 10 Vega CUs for the top-end Ryzen 7 3700C. The Athlon Gold 3150 and Silver 3050, both C SKUs, are built on TSMC's 14nm process node, and they're based on Zen, while the Ryzen 3000C parts are all on Zen Plus, built on 12 nanometers. So because the product numbers here are pretty similar, just to be really clear there, some of these are called Athlon and some are called Ryzen. So that's the distinction to pay attention to, more so than the number. The number you should be paying attention to second. AMD is working with Google and Chromebook partners like Acer, for example, Asus, HP, Lenovo, to bring Chromebooks to market with this 3000C series of CPUs with a target arrival date of Q4 for the new Chromebooks. Next up, Intel, still signed to Huawei. Reports have surfaced this past week that indicate Intel is still doing a certain undisclosed amount of business with the blacklisted partner Huawei. Huawei has been blacklisted since May of 2019. It's come in and out of market accessibility to American companies since then, and the current administration has effectively moved to cut off the company from American technology and IP altogether, requiring any American-based companies to acquire specific licenses before shipping to companies like Huawei. Intel stated that it had acquired a license to sell certain products to Huawei, but declined to confirm what products those may be. Interestingly, SK Hynix sought a similar license, but was apparently denied. Intel has yet to comment on the matter, despite multiple publications reaching out, but for now, it is still technically permissible to sell to Huawei as long as there's a license in place and an approved agreement. Western Digital, up next, spinning off SSDs as a separate line from its plagued hard drives from recent news coverage of them. In an effort to become more agile, allegedly, to market conditions and accelerate product development and growth, Western Digital says that it is dividing its hard drive and SSD lines into two different business units internally. It's unlikely that customers should notice the change from what we understand right now, but WD says it would allow it better ability to address the industry's storage and data needs, which it says range from IoT, edge devices, cloud infrastructure, and all the other stuff with it. WD stated in a press release that both hard drive and SSD units will be headed up by separate general managers, and that should help align and, quotes, diversify the company's portfolio. WD has yet to name a general manager publicly for its newly minted HDD business unit. Its flash business unit, though, will see Robert Soderberry take control as executive vice president and general manager. His past experience includes a stint at Cisco, Symantec, which makes one of the worst products we've ever used, Norton, and Veritas, as well as Rubrik, McKinsey, and Uplift. So these internal shuffles come not long after WD had a whole lot of issues with its WD Red line, specifically the hard drive line, where there were concerns about SMR and the use of it in the WD Reds. Amazon and its Luna game streaming service also got announced this week. So Amazon's finally taking the wraps off of its anticipated game streaming service, now known as Luna. The service has been rumored for well over a year at this point, and it's suspected to have been known internally as Project Tempo. With Luna, Amazon is hoping to throw its weight behind cloud gaming, and as a reminder, the company also owns Twitch. This will be competing against Microsoft's xCloud and Google Stadia for the early game streaming market crowd. While Amazon hasn't made Luna widely available, the service will initially come to PC, Mac, Fire TV, iPhone, and iPad. You can apply to see if you are worthy of getting access to it, just like we did on their site. Android will see availability sometime after launch. And interestingly, Amazon is carving Luna up into channels, with the first two channels being Luna Plus and a Ubisoft channel. Users who are interested can sign up for early access with an introduction price of $6 per month for the Luna Plus channel, and Luna Plus will bundle games like Control 2, Resident Evil 7, and The Surge 2, among others. Amazon's Luna will come with an Amazon-designed controller, which appears to be one of the more interesting controller designs outside of Sony and Microsoft's, at least. And as a reminder, the Google Stadia controller is best taken apart with a Dremel. But presumably there's an internal tool somewhere that makes it easier to squish it together so you can get it apart, because they hide the screws, and there's not many. The Luna controller, though, we look forward to taking apart as soon as it becomes available to us. Quote, Luna controller is Alexa-enabled. Pause quote here. So if you'd like a spy in your house, along with your phone and everything else, the Luna controller is a good fit for you. The quote continues and says, it connects directly to the cloud and effortlessly controls your game, featuring a multiple antenna design that prioritizes uninterrupted Wi-Fi for lower latency gaming. In fact, our testing showed a reduction in round-trip latency when playing Luna controller with Cloud Direct versus Luna controller with Bluetooth, with reductions between 17 to 30 milliseconds on PC, Fire TV, and Mac. Because the Luna controller connects directly to cloud servers, players can easily switch between screens, such as Fire TV to mobile phone, without additional pairing or configuration changes. We've heard this somewhere before, Google Stadia, and the negative latency claims didn't really come to fruition there. However, Amazon's not claiming negative latency. Amazon is claiming a very specific range, 17 to 30 millisecond reduction. This is something that's easily verifiable, and we look forward to working on it. It makes a lot of sense as a technology to pair the input device to something other than the computer. What Stadia was trying to do was bypass your system, PC receiving the data from wherever, and go to your router. So you're sending the data over to the router, bypassing the computer, and then that gets sent out, theoretically cutting maybe a couple milliseconds off the pipe, but we didn't really see much of a change. So Amazon's claiming similar things. They're doing it a bit of a different way. We'll test it once it's out. Having a range of 17 to 30 is much easier to verify than, say, negative latency. The Luna controller will cost $50. It says that there is a Bluetooth-enabled controller. You could also, as an input device, you could also use keyboard and mouse if you prefer. Luna will offer custom integrations with Twitch, such as the ability to watch streams from within Luna and launch games that you're watching. Of course, the ultimate move would be to make it so you can launch the game and join the server that the streamer's in, so that stream sniping is easier and more accessible than ever. As you can imagine, Luna is powered by AWS, specifically the EC2 G4 instances, and these instances use NVIDIA's T4 tensor accelerators and custom Intel Cascade Lake SP Xeons. AWS EC2 G4 instances have been previously deployed for heavy machine learning inference and graphics-intensive applications. Of course, the biggest limitation with any game streaming is internet connection and accessibility. There's also a concern to consider of moving further and further away from game ownership, although we sort of already forfeited that when everyone unanimously moved to Steam and other platforms like Origin. You're basically just licensing the access anyway. Microsoft revealing expansion card prices for Xbox. So the prices for Microsoft's proprietary storage expansion cards have been made available, and we've already seen somewhat cringy takes on the matter. The 1 terabyte expansion card made by Seagate will cost $220, for example. Some of the less technically focused, more mainstream outlets we saw talking about this were comparing it to a Switch Lite, like the total console in cost, or to half the price of an Xbox Series S. As you all know, being in PC hardware, there's a wide gradient for the quality of a single component. So an SSD costing more than a video card is obviously perfectly possible depending on which two components you're looking at. So we don't really think that's the right lens to view this with. You shouldn't be comparing the cost of an SSD to a console because it doesn't make any sense to do that. So the 1 terabyte expansion card is based on the fastest storage interface available now, which is NVMe via PCIe Gen 4. Its price isn't far off to comparable SSDs in the M.2 form factor, and the Sabrent Rocket model, which has emerged as one of the most popular recently, is an NVMe 4.0 PCIe Gen 4 M.2 SSD that costs $200 for the 1 terabyte configuration. So similarly, Corsair's Force MP600 hovers in the $190 to $200 range. Not far off, in other words. Some of the more astute viewers or readers have pointed out that the expansion cards for the new Xbox consoles look more akin to an SD card than anything else, and that may account for why there's so much of a reaction to the price that we've seen in media. As ever, there should be more options available in time, but this is pre-launch at this point. So it's going to be first party for now. That's it for the news. As always, check back for more. You can go to store.gamersnexus.net to pick up the shirt or patreon.com/gamersnexus. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.